Now, of course, ALEC is short for the American Legislative Exchange Council. Now, they're a bit of a secretive group of lobbyists, legislatures, and corporations. And you've been hearing a lot about them. They've got ties to the Koch brothers. And my story tonight is I want to talk a little bit about a representative, a Democrat, that actually crashed one of their meetings. Now, she didn't really crash the meeting. She just kind of walked in and had a little name tag, and it wasn't really much of an infiltration as much as I'm going to come in here and sit here and be part of this. And if they ask me a question, if they ask if I'm a Democrat, I'm going to say yeah. Okay, so this representative's name was Chris Taylor, and she attended the American Legislative Exchange Council annual conference in Chicago. And she writes about her experience in a magazine called The Progressive, and it said, quote, from that piece, she said, quote, ALEC members have been quietly working out of the public eye to develop their agenda so that when given the opportunity, they are ready to start creating an ALEC nation. I'm not quite sure what she means by ALEC nation, but she continues, that time has come and they are ready. So I want to go a little bit about the history first of ALEC and kind of mention what they're about. Now, ALEC was founded back in the 1970s by some conservatives, one by the name of Paul Weyrich. Another is Henry Hyde and Lou Bennett. Now, you remember Paul Weyrich as the guy who famously said the Goo-Goo Syndrome. People, we don't want people to vote. We don't want people to, have good government, because, the more people vote, the worse, the less likely we are to win. So that's why you see ALEC backing a lot of these voter ID laws that we're seeing in the states. Now, of course, ALEC, its main purpose is to create pieces of model legislation. And, of course, ALEC boasts that it creates thousands of pieces of that model legislation each year. And since 2010, when conservatives had their red tide, or I don't know what to call it, where they basically taken over a lot of state legislatures and won a lot of governorships, they've enacted quite a few of those laws. Now, of course, what are some of those laws that ALEC had backed? Well, you had Florida's controversial Stand Your Ground law that we've heard a lot on because of the Trayvon Martin case. You also had anti-union measures in places like Michigan and Wisconsin, and of course all the famous voter ID laws that they tried to use in 2012, and they're going to try and bring back, and they already are bringing back some of these laws, looking forward to 2014 and 2016. 2013 alone, so far, 139 ALEC-written education voucher bills have been proposed in 43 states and Washington, D.C. Out of those 139, 31 had become law. Now, these laws, of course, these voucher laws, take public money and ship it over to private institutions that may be religious in nature. Now, what's the thing that we're not supposed to do? Fund religious studies, right? And religious schools. Well, that's what we're doing with these vouchers, and I think that's fundamentally wrong. Now, this Wisconsin Democrat, who once again sat in on the meeting, she writes about an interaction she had with one of the other attendees, and this is very, very poignant here. One guy I was talking to, who was from one of these right-wing think tanks, was saying we need to curb Obama's reckless power with these administrative regulations, and he wanted a constitutional amendment saying that Congress has to approve federal regulations. Now, in response, she said, I don't think most people are going to want to amend the Constitution for that. I don't think that ignites people. Maybe it does on the far right, but most people don't really care about that. And this is the part that's really important. He responded, oh well, you don't really need people to do this. You just need control over the legislature, and you need money. And we have both. Wow.
I love it when Republicans get caught with their pants down and get caught by someone paying attention who cares when they say something this stupid, this, well, selfish,
I don't really think that they
greedy.
were getting caught with their pants down. They are so open and brazen about their corporate ties and about who they serve. It's not really a surprise.
Well, it's obvious
If
that
you
he
catch a
thought he was.
Republican saying that he's for the rich, if you catch him saying he's for the rich, and you call him out on it, he's going to be like, yeah, so I've always been for the rich.
Well,
What
yeah,
about you?
they defend it, saying like
Jobs and shit.
social Darwinism and all that. Of course, we're for the rich because the rich are better people, obviously, because they're rich. If they weren't better people, they wouldn't be rich.
Well, I love
But
how you brought up social Darwinism. Now, I'm a video gamer, okay? I love video games. And I'm going to tie in an obscure reference. Now, just recently, I got some time, and I sat down and played a little bit of Bioshock, right? And the whole story involves around, back in the 1950s, a very rich Ayn Randian-inspired person went and built an underwater city. And, for the rich people, it's a haven of free market capitalism, right? It's just a haven of no rules, no regulation. You do what you're going to do, whatever, right? And of course, in this game, it turns out to be an epic disaster, of course. And it just playing that game, you hear some of the characters that talk, and the main antagonist is the guy who created the city, and he calls poor people parasites openly.
It sounds too realistic. I mean, fiction and reality are becoming hazier and hazier, and it's just amazing. The the, the headlines are sounding more and more like crazy fiction, like something you'd find on
The Onion.
an Onion article. Yeah, something that doesn't seem like it should be real, but it is, and that makes it scary.
Absolutely.
Well, it's like, for instance, you were talking about that video game. It sounds a lot like, a little bit like this new movie coming out, this new Matt Damon movie called
Oh,
Elysium.
Elysium.
Elysium, yeah, where all the rich people have created this huge spacecraft and created a civilization in space and left the now destroyed, dismantled, deteriorating Earth to all the poor people, and it's a complete shithole. And it's scary because it really could be our future in
Right, and
one
ALEC,
sense or another.
and like places like ALEC, organizations like ALEC, they want to make this. I'm sorry, they want to make this happen. And do you know who's tied into ALEC and very, very influential within the company or within the organization? Koch Industries.
Of course, I knew it.
They're one of the largest funders, and they're one of the largest, most influential members. And so they write a lot of the oil regulations, or I should say, model legislation to get rid of oil regulations or climate regulations, so they can pollute more, so they can make more money.
Absolutely. I haven't seen Citizen Coke yet, but I'm sure that documentary will go into it. But also the documentary, the Koch brothers Exposed, also goes into their ties with ALEC and also their involvement with the Libertarian Party and the funding of libertarian organizations that promote the rapid and immense deregulation of government, so that basically corporations, including the Koch brothers, can be left to do whatever they want with people, with the environment, with animals. It doesn't matter. They want absolute control to do what they want.
Yeah, and some more information on ALEC is that ALEC has over 2,000 legislative members and 300 or more corporate members, and those I think are conservative numbers. I think there are plenty more corporations that are probably part of ALEC or want to be part of ALEC. And here's an interesting part. Now, legislatures they end up getting all expense paid vacations, airfare to meetings, lodgings, and other events, and they get all this stuff paid for by something called a scholarship. Legalized bribes, essentially, because it's really sketchy, but right now it's legal,
And it's just so sick.
and
It's
it's
all.
paid
It's
for
always. It's
it's
always
paid for
these,
by corporate members.
and they're already rich. These people are already filthy, stinking, disgusting, blatantly, grotesquely rich, and they're getting free shit. Are you kidding
Now,
me?
if you're a new legislator, right? If you're a new state legislator, it doesn't take that much to buy them. I think we heard a story that it took what, like $1,000 to buy votes from a congressman.
Yep.
In campaign donations, you give $1,000, to somebody running for a small state office, and you get return on investment from the legislation that they pass, ALEC-backed legislation.
It's
And
amazing if you can just buy people if you have enough money. You really can. You can just buy them.
in this system, you have to, because if you're not bought by somebody, then someone else is, and then they can challenge you and primary you and beat you in an election. Remember, 96% of what is it? 96% of times in the Senate, if your opponent has more money than you, you will lose.
Yep.
And
It's like
it's in the high 90s in the House, so it's pay to play.
it's like I know you don't watch the show, and I certainly hope you get to at some point, but it really is like we're living in a modern version of Game of Thrones. And one of the first things that one of the characters says in the very first season is, in the Game of Thrones, you either win or you die. And that's the game these people are playing.
But they're not literally dying. But as far
No.
as their political careers, yeah, that's, I would say, a pretty close to an accurate assessment, because you get beat out by donors from the other side, and you don't have any financial support. Well, you can't even run unless you have significant financial support. It
And
takes
just
like
like
something
in
like $1 million just to run. The first thing that they ask you is, how much money do you got?
and just like in Game of Thrones, it seems like the person with the most altruistic motivations is the one that always comes out losing. And that's the way it works in real life. It seems like the person that actually has the desires and the good the desire to help and benefit the common people, the politicians that actually have a soul and want to make a difference in how things are run, those are the ones that never seem to really get ahead.
In the system that we have, you have to have money. And as long as we have this kind of system where you have to have money in order to, get elected, you're going to have legalized bribery, and you're not going to be represented by that politician, because who do the politicians represent if all they need, to win is campaign donations? They're going to
Right.
represent the corporations, and they're going to represent their donors, and we're not going to have a democracy. And that is something that absolutely needs to change.